Coming to you from the NBC Tower in downtown Chicago, AEW Revolution rocks the wrestling world from not too far from where I am right now. Matt Hardy leaves the WWE. He's a free agent. His future endeavors, where do they lie? Will they be all elite? We'll talk about all of it on today's WrestleZone Daily. It is a little bit past 5 p.m. in the Central Hour, but I'm looking at my clock, and my clock doesn't tell me that's the time. It tells me that it's Raider time, baby. Comedian David Raider joining us once again. David Raider, you can follow him on the Twitter at Sir David Raider. You can follow me at Kev Kelm. If you're with us on the podcast side of things, don't forget to give us a 5-star review on any of the podcast apps you're on. If you're on the YouTubies, press that thumbs up. We're new on the YouTubies, okay? Stop looking at cat videos and watch our stuff. We have a whole bunch of episodes there as well. And, of course, our faithful fans on Facebook. We'll get into the big news of the day here, David. We will cover AEW Revolution. We will cover the fan freakouts about Super Showdown. What did they do with Goldberg? We got a lot to talk about here. We got a lot to cover. WrestleMania matches got made this weekend. Just a ton to cover here.
Yep, there's a lot in the world of wrestling, and I'm ready to give my typical Raider time opinions.
Looking at the clock, it's time to give some hot takes.
Yep.
Yeah, it's hot take o'clock. That's what it is. Yeah. If you're with us live, of course, you guys can get your comments here on screen. We'll cover all. I know a lot of people are already happy about all the big news coming out of AEW Revolution. Some people not so happy about Super Showdown stuff. Other people happy about it as well. We'll get into all of it. Okay. But let's get into our lead-off story of the day. Matt Hardy. He's been stirring the pot for weeks and weeks and weeks. He was featured recently on Monday Night Raw, but really more of a send-off angle where he was basically destroyed over the course of 2 weeks by Randy Orton. That evil Randy Orton really laid him out. But, Matt Hardy has always kept that podcast feed, that YouTube feed of his hot, doing his own things there and giving it to be this way for him to continue to do characters that maybe he isn't even doing on television. He's been doing the Free the Delete series. He's been doing Thoughts from the Throne, where he's really just kind of vaguely shooting on his future, but not giving you everything you really want to hear. But he confirmed last night that his WWE contract has expired. He also noted he is open to the idea of coming back to WWE, and he wanted to make it clear that he will be back at WWE at some point. But
no, he's on good terms with WWE.
He's on very good terms. In terms of the recent wave of people that want to get out of WWE, and do it, and they just want to get out of their contract. This one seems like the most amicable in the sense of that he knew what he was doing. They knew what he was doing. He got to do some cool stuff on the way out. He advanced an angle on the way out. He was purposeful in his role with Randy Orton. That really continued to keep that Edge Orton angle going without Edge being there in a very, very valid, gravitating way. And now, he leaves WWE on good terms. WWE just in the last hour wishing him the standard well in his future endeavors. And the pot continues to stir on today's Being the Elite episode from All Elite Wrestling. Obviously, a lot of people think he's going there. And they noted the Young Bucks that they got a phone call from the 910 area code, which is the same area code as Matt Hardy's hometown, Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Well, I mean, he definitely did leave WWE on better terms than most, so we're not going to get that Talk is Jericho podcast interview where he shoots on everybody under the sun and calls Vince McMahon an idiot over a bunch of pooper scooper thoughts. But, the interesting thing about Matt Hardy as a free agent is he's got good ties basically everywhere at this point, which is, you forget as a guy who cut his teeth in WWE from the time he was, I think while he was still in his teens, he's got connections with Ring of Honor, which kind of, through Marty Scurll. Now he has backdoor channels to New Japan. I don't think he should go to New Japan. What's left of his knees will surely disintegrate within a month. But he's got ties to AEW. Obviously, there's a lot of that hype about him being the Exalted One. Which I got to tell you, man, at this point, everyone's expecting it so much. I don't want him to be the Exalted One. I think
that is where a lot of fans just want to say that's where he's going. That's where he's going. Why doesn't you just say he's going there? And if you're mad that he's just not telling you what he's doing, then it's been effective. You know what I mean? Then he's gotten people talking that don't even really follow him, that aren't even like his fans. And he's been able to do that a handful of times in his career, is to stir the pot. And he's been the most effective, I would say, of modern wrestlers who kind of came up in the digital era. He's been very, very crafty about this. In this video, he says that as he looks forward to what his next move is going to be, that the first show he was going to watch was Being the Elite, that he was going to watch Monday Night Raw, that he was going to watch SmackDown.
He plugs everybody, yeah.
He plugged everybody. He said everything. Now, obviously, that's just, he's just kind of covering his tracks, right? He wants to keep you on your toes, but still keep you anticipating something here.
Yeah, and you know what? If a lot of people haven't talked about the Ring of Honor angle, but those dudes, A, they're throwing around a lot of money. B, they are obviously going in a new creative direction with Marty Scurll having the book with Delirious. That makes you think that, that might be a little more tempting of an idea for guys, especially somebody like Matt Hardy, who has the history there with Ring of Honor, albeit briefly. He did have a great run with Jeff there for a couple of months. They had that great ladder match with the Young Bucks, which of course signals, that's an AEW tie. But, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Matt Hardy winds up in Ring of Honor. It's not the work rate promotion like it used to be, man. Like guys that are up there can kind of get over on gimmicks now, whereas, gimmicks wasn't the thing with your classic Ring of Honor. There was no gimmick guys. It was just basically all Japan, 4 Pillars era in America. That was the idea. But nowadays it's completely different over there. So I think Matt Hardy would fit in really well over there. But also, and I said earlier, I don't want him to be the Exalted One just because I think at this point, I think we would all be surprised by literally anybody else doing it. And I kind of want the surprise pop from it. But he would also be great at that role. So I'm not shitting on the idea that he is the Exalted One. That would be great. He'll be great at whatever he does. Not only does he have a great character that he knows what it is, he has different shades of the character that he can work with. And so, he doesn't have to be full-blown broken Matt Hardy. He could take elements of that. He can incorporate it with, just other stuff that he's done in his career. He's got other stuff to draw on. He's got Matt Hardy version 2 if he wants to go back to that. It's 2020. There's 2 2s in that. You could go something like that. I gotta get more
Matt facts on the screen when I'm doing the show. I gotta get more Matt facts. I gotta get Kev facts over there on the other side of the screen.
Yeah. Kind of like Matt facts / pop-up video.
Hey, VH1 pop-up video is an underrated show. Go back and watch it.
No, that's legit, man. No, nobody is talking shit about pop-up video. Don't.
I'm not trying to get heat.
I would never.
Late 90s, early 2000s, basic cable music trivia shows. I'm not trying to get
bump and feed for pop-up radio any day of the week. I will take that arm drag. I will roll out of the ring and I will catch him on the tope suicida.
All right, Noel Orlando Roland is texting in saying, will Matt Hardy re-sign with WWE and join NXT? Even Hardy has teased this in one of his tweets. He used next, and he emphasized capital NXT. But I mean, I think he's stirring the pot in every different direction he can to keep everyone from knowing what they think he's going to do, or at least keep you anticipating what his next move is going to do. It is intriguing the way the time lines up for him ending the Free the Delete series, which has just been him doing another version of the broken Matt Hardy character that you've seen on WWE and Impact Wrestling. He hasn't done that character on television in over a year. And so he's been doing it there. People like it. And he says the series finale will be a multi-part episode that'll start dropping at noon Eastern on Wednesday, which will be intriguing because that's the same day as WWE NXT and All Elite Wrestling Dynamite. It's also worth noting We had AEW Revolution in town this past weekend. We will talk about that
We
on
did.
you and I were both there. We were in the cheap seats in
Yep.
the Wintrust Arena. I was not a part of the backstage media scrums, though we did have plenty of our friends in the wrestling media world there, and I checked out their great coverage. And one of the interesting clips that kind of came out of those media scrums was several people asking AEW president Tony Khan to comment on the free agent status of Matt Hardy and whether or not he would have a future in AEW. Khan just dodged that question, and that's a very rare thing for him to do. And he said no comment. I believe Sean Rossap of Fightful emphasized, kind of did a follow-up saying, well, he's a free agent. You can comment about it now. And he once again said no comment. So I think there is pot stirring there on AEW side. My assumption is that he goes to AEW.
And that would be a good fit for him, honestly. I mean, I think you can read into Tony Khan dodging the question as they are negotiating, or at the very least, they think they have a shot at him. I think that if there's one thing you can take from that, it's that when Matt Hardy says he's operating as a free agent right now, that is 100% true. He is not going to tie himself down to a contract right now. And frankly, I don't think he should. I think he should play it out for, 3-4 months. He can do like indies. He can kind of do whatever he wants. I mean, he shouldn't be going to PWG by any stretch of the imagination. Like, the one problem with Matt Hardy being an independent guy is, the independents now more than ever, that they're all work rate essentially. And Matt Hardy, if this were 20 years ago, he would be outstanding. I would love to see what he would be doing. He's just got so many miles on his body. He's been close to 30 years in the business. And right now, he's kind of in a position where he's got to do almost a NWA style, like, big man brawling match. Now, that would be kind of interesting. Do you think maybe he could even go to NWA? We've seen Marty Scurll pop in there. That could be a very easy way to do short-term, a stopgap before committing to a different promotion, getting it out there, and also kind of tweaking the character for the national audience.
Yeah.
They record 4 weeks of TV at a time, so that's like 2 days, and then he's on 2 months of TV. It kind of fits
promo
perfectly.
heavy. And everything with NWA is so promo heavy. If you watch the NWA Power Show, it's a handful of matches. You get one big long match and a lot of promos. It's a fun show. It's very much an old school format show from the 80s and 70s. He's had some collaborators there. I know David Lagana has done some stuff with Matt over the years. Billy Corgan is very fond of him. Billy Corgan's very short period in Impact Wrestling kind of crosses with Matt Hardy being there a little bit as well. So you have some collaborators that he's worked with there before, and some fresh people he could work with as well. Let's see what fans are saying here. Chris Green saying he'd like to see that NWA move here. Other people like Tawab Ahmed saying, I think he can do the broken gimmick. I really enjoyed it. And Raven can be the Dark Order's leader. There's some people.
My man.
Have you seen this? Have you seen
a couple weeks ago?
We scoped this out. We scoped this out, and it wasn't too. It wasn't like WrestleZone was the first to get to this, but I think we were the first to kind of make a note of it and put a magnifying glass on it. When the Exalted One is referenced, they always reference that he is watching, or he is watching what the Dark Order is doing, and he will make his presence felt. Right, that he is already present amongst whatever wrestling is right now. Right.
Yeah.
They've already laid out the idea that he is someone in wrestling. Okay. And at the Battle Royal, they did the tag team Battle Royal where Dark Order's featured. It broke it out into a ringside brawl. SCU went over the railing. They pull out the wide shot. There's one person you can see just sitting, not getting out of their seat, looking at the action. And it's Raven.
Yep. And that commentary doesn't even mention him, as though he is in the background, even in the televised world of professional wrestling, even when everything is, the professionalism is down to the most minute detail, somehow Raven is missed in that shot. And, obviously that's intentional that they don't bring it up because they want you to start thinking, oh, maybe it's Raven. I think it's probably more of a red herring. I think that's just a cool Easter egg thing they did just to throw
And
people off.
that is something that AEW would do. They've done a
Yeah.
lot of red herring things to distract you. Look at this hand while we do something with the other hand. They've done that quite a bit.
Yeah, which makes it fun. It's fun to watch a wrestling company where they don't telegraph everything and spoon feed it to you for 4
No,
weeks in a row.
that's just not at WWE, but there's a reason why that works. And aren't they kind of spoon feeding it to you online? All AEW is doing, if they are bringing Matt Hardy in, is spoon feeding it to you online. They're just doing it in a different format. That's it.
Well,
You could
they're
telegraphing
teasing
that
it.
too.
They're not beating you over the head with it though. The one thing, the
But that's
difference
how
between
these things
AEW
work.
and WWE
Nah,
is
nah, Raider. I'm throwing it out.
subtlety.
I'm throwing it out.
Subtlety.
Subtlety is
There's no
not a part of
subtlety.
wrestling. It's AC/DC. Play the riffs loud. Let me see it. You know what I mean? Build it up. Okay. I
Oh,
get
you
what you're
can have
saying.
subtlety in wrestling.
I get it. But not everything in this case has it. And I wouldn't say
New
this.
Japan is so subtle. New Japan has so much subtlety, man. You can
Mhm.
see it in wrestling. It happens all the time. The Americanized version of wrestling, which has been in a monopoly for so long, it's just one way of telling a story. Whereas AEW, it proves to you that there's a lot of different shades that you could do in storytelling. I saw somebody just down there say that AEW is WCW 2.0, and there is a lot of WCW elements in there.
Tons.
Remember when we were at Revolution, one of the things we were marking out about super hard was how they had the ramp connect straight to the ring. It was a straight line, like those early 90s WCW pay-per-views. I was expecting Cactus Jack to do a dive off it with a chair and drop an elbow on
They have.
Lita or somebody.
I'm going to borrow a phrase. They have an aesthetic boner for everything from WCW that they want to get back.
I
Uh,
totally
and
I totally get it.
yeah, this has been noted about them. I don't want to even if you're just joining us, this is WrestleZone Daily. We can get your questions on screen if you're with us for the first time. We will do some questions near the end of the show because there's a lot of things to kind of cover this weekend. Right now at WrestleZone.com, there's a bunch of different stories we're talking about besides Matt Hardy. The Great Muda was scheduled to be a part of the big festivities for
I'm so happy
WrestleCon.
Sonny Ono is in the news again.
We'll get
That
into it.
makes me so
This
happy.
is another WCW connection, right? The Great Muta, one of the most legendary wrestling figures in Japan. Certainly, anytime you get to see him in the United States, it is rare. So a lot of hardcore fans want to see him there.
Oh,
He was scheduled to have a match at Spring Break, which is kind of like a comedy festival gimmick show put together by Joey Janela, and he'll promote it. It's under the GCW banner. And Muta was supposed to be a part of it, and his representative was Sonny Otto, who's represented several big wrestlers, and he's been an on-screen manager and an off-screen legit shoot manager for a bunch of different wrestlers for doing stuff here in the United States. And basically, Sonny Otto shot on GCW, the promoter, saying they didn't have the money, and it was just all these wrestling online social media pew 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 back and forth type stuff. And GCW also put their name on the record, and they're not the only ones that get hurt here. WrestleCon, which is the biggest wrestling convention, WrestleMania week outside of WWE's WrestleMania Axis, they don't have Muta now, so it's this whole thing. Like if you were going to WrestleCon, like getting a picture with Great Muta would have to be on like a short list if you're a diehard fan, right?
Oh yeah, especially if you're a fan of if you're a fan of WCW in the 90s, if you're a fan of Japanese wrestling in the 90s, even if you're a fan of NWA in the late 80s, Muta is one of those guys that spans different generations. Even if you're a fan of various colored mists, you're a big fan of Great Muta. The Muta scale would be a great heavy metal band name. I hope it's out there.
There's got to be a band called Muta. There has to be a
There's
band.
got to be a band called the Muta Scale. That would be the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, getting a picture with Great Muta would be awesome. I do have to say, Sonny Ono was a WCW manager during a very formative time in my life. So much so that when Sonny Bono got killed in the skiing accident, I thought for a week it was Sonny Ono.
That's so sad.
I really
so
thought
sad.
Sonny Ono, the guy who invented selfies. That man doesn't get enough credit. in a way, I almost don't mind him trying to steal money as much as he possibly can, because that man deserves royalties for inventing the selfie that he never got. He should be a billionaire right now. It's like when Osprey said that if wrestlers could get royalties on moves, Amazing Red would be a millionaire right now.
Hey man,
Like,
you owe me a check. You owe me a check for that spinning pile driver, pal. You like
yeah,
that?
exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, cool. That is the fifth code red on this indie show. I've made $40.
Dude, you're
Like,
never gonna get that code red. You I know you want to do that code red move. I know you're big backyard work. You're never gonna hit that code red.
Mike O'Keefe, I know you're out there. I'm gonna hit that code red on you, you dumb son of a bitch. It's happening. It's gonna happen tonight at Best Night Ever.
Yeah, check out your comedy show that you produce with a friend of the show, Mike O'Keefe. You can check out his podcast, Buddy of the Groom.
Well, tonight and every Monday nights, we are doing Best Night Ever down at the new Lincoln Lodge, 2040 North Milwaukee Avenue. That will start at 9 o'clock. $5 cover. I will be doing a set tonight, and I will be wearing my Los Ingobernables hat. And if I get 5 people at the door saying they came from WrestleZone, I will do my set in a Toru Yano t-shirt that is way too small for me.
There we go. Gotta do the Yano pose. All right, let's get into the WCW. Let's get out of WCW AEW chatter. Right, we have some other things to talk about here. We will talk about Revolution within the show, but there is more WrestleMania shakeups coming on. Now there was good news for WWE fans and maybe bad news, depending on what type of fan you were, coming out of Super Showdown. If you haven't checked out our post show, we have it up. It's in the podcast feed. Very, very popular show. I will say that. And I want to thank everyone who downloaded the podcast. We saw a 27% increase of the podcast downloads in last week. So thank you very much for that. But a lot of mixed opinions about the belt being put on Goldberg. He defeated Bray Wyatt, the Fiend, in short fashion. A lot of time, energy being put into the Fiend character. A lot of fans upset that Goldberg at 53, still looking like, a machine that could wreck people, is your WWE Universal Champion. But the matches have been made on this week's SmackDown the following night in Boston. Of course, the WWE crew making that long flight from Saudi Arabia from Super Showdown to Boston for SmackDown, but it was well worth it. Big crowd for them in Boston. Very, very big crowd for WWE SmackDown Boston, and it showed in the ratings. Show scored number 1 in 18 to 34 demographic on network television and is the 3rd highest rated SmackDown show since they moved to Fox in October. Of course, it helped that Goldberg and John Cena were on the show.
John Cena right there. You kind of buried the lead.
Yeah.
That's the reason that they spiked the rating.
But they promoted that Cena was going to be on the show for weeks, so you knew you were getting something with John Cena. You knew you were getting a WrestleMania angle with him, and you got one with Goldberg right away. They did him pretty simply. Goldberg came out, opened the show. He said it's not about what happened then. It's about who's next. And Roman Reigns came out. 2-word promo. I'm next. Boom. There you go. You got a WrestleMania match. Roman Reigns versus Goldberg for the Universal Championship. End of the show is John Cena kind of indulging the WWE audience who have not seen him in a long time in his hometown, no less. And he then has a kind of creepy face-off on the top of the ramp with The Fiend. So that is the next match you will get. The Fiend versus John Cena. Now, a lot of different directions this could go. We've been talking about this for weeks. There was a talk of them doing a John Cena versus Elias match. There was talk of Roman Reigns versus Bray Wyatt with the Universal title involved. But based on the way this all shaked out, I kind of think these are the best matches you could get out of all 4 guys on the SmackDown side, and matches that appeal to both a hardcore fan and a casual fan. And WrestleMania is that show that has to balance both. They have to balance those fans that just tune in this time of the year, little kids who love big superheroes, and, 30-something dorks like me and you that have been watching our whole lives. I think these matches on paper are really good, and I don't think WWE did a bad job telling them. Now, Super Showdown just felt like this kind of service point to get you there, like to get the belt off Fiend and get it on Goldberg. And I know that's upset a lot of people, but you can't deny that was trending. You had Goldberg trending in the top 10 worldwide on Twitter for over 24 hours. That's publicity you can't buy sometimes. And so it definitely got the needle moving for them and affected TV. What did you think here are the moves they've made heading into WrestleMania?
Well, I think that if I were running not a wrestling company, but a corporation that traffics in wrestling, these are the right moves to make. That might not satisfy me as a fan that wants the creative product to just be as good as it can possibly be. But I do understand why they did it in the sense that, you got Goldberg drawing at the top with the title. That's going to appeal to casual fans. You've got John Cena now in the match with the Fiend. That's going to draw to the casual fans. I get why they do it, especially with all this talk going around. The latest stock call made it sound like that WWE's big revenue making move here in the next quarter is going to be selling the rights to WrestleMania. Now, whether that's with maybe ESPN Plus or whoever, there's a lot of speculation about who it could be. There's a new network called Peacock that's supposed to be starting up here right around the same time. There's a lot of different potential buyers, but I get, if that's their main goal is to make WrestleMania a streaming content that can be bought by a third party streamer to help out with their streaming services, then these are the moves that kind of make sense. I mean, it also speaks to the bigger problem of
this would make sense if they weren't doing that. This would make sense if they weren't doing that. And here's why I'll say that: the Fiend, as much as the same type of fan that I see that follows what we do at WrestleZone, that goes to the Wrestling Observer, that listens to all the podcasts, they want to know everything, just like you and I. You and I have our thread with all of our wrestling buddies, and we always, crap on everything. But when you look at it logically, WrestleMania is this event that is always going to be that intersection. It's always going to be hardcore fan, casual fan. And it's always going to be that perfect intersection. And you have to balance between the two of them. And WrestleMania, even if we were just talking about the network, would still just be the event where they know they're going to get the most subscribers, this time of year. From Royal Rumble to now. It's the biggest quarter of the year for the company, And you mentioned all the other streaming stuff like that. If you apply that, then this move makes even more sense. That you're getting names that people know, that people want to spend money on. As much as fans want to complain about a Goldberg being bad, the ratings are up on SmackDown since he's been a part of the show. The quarter hour where he faced off with Bray Wyatt increased by 27% from the previous week at the same time. He's a needle move. He's a needle move.
I think a lot of people's problem, the reason they don't deny that the retro pops definitely work on ratings. That's why they kept bringing. They had those Hogan Flair segments for a few weeks, building up to the last Saudi Arabia show. They used Hogan and Flair. I think everyone's problem is they are going back to those guys at the expense of building new stars. And I think a lot of people thought that the Fiend had a potential. Whether they could realize that potential, I don't know. I think they had a lot of creative roadblocks that they set up for themselves that they didn't need to be there, but they kind of did it anyway, and they just they potentially damaged the drawing power of the Fiend. But I think people thought if you want to sell a WrestleMania the way, you can't rely on you're watching guys that are in their 50s and you're still using them to draw pay-per-views. And the last two Goldberg matches in Saudi Arabia, one, he got concussed 30 seconds in, and it looked like him and Undertaker were both going to kill each other. And then the second one, he had a better match, but the jackhammer was basically just kind of a vertical suplex at the end. So, you're relying on these part-timers, and you're still relying on part-timers to main event WrestleMania, not just part-timers. I wouldn't mind part-timers if they were... So, if you could get, I don't know, 41, however old CM Punk is, if you can just, draw CM Punk in and he can still work a really good match, that's one thing. You're relying on pretty old guys at this point, and you're relying on them at the expense of making new stars. And these new guys, they aren't very young. I know we're gonna talk about Matt Riddle in a little bit, and I know that Matt Riddle, people think he's very young because he looks very young. He's 34. He's already up there. You don't have, by the time these guys get to WWE, a lot of times they've already worked a full career on the indies. They have a lot of wear and tear on their bodies. They're already in their mid 30s, and you don't have a very big window to build these guys anymore. And you're kind of squandering an entire generation of guys in order to get these new ones to keep these old part timers over. And, at this point, I think the frustration from the fans with Goldberg and Undertaker and
Sure.
John Cena at the top isn't so much that those are the guys that they're using to sell. It's that they're using them at the expense of not building new guys. Like, who are the part timers that you're going to draw off of in 15 years? You're going to trot
Sure.
out 65-year-old Goldberg? You can't do that.
No. No, no.
You need to build new
You're
guys.
making a great point. You're making a great point. And that's all long-term thinking, and I get that, but I don't think modern media with the ability to turn it on and turn it off and it's so accessible. So if it's so accessible, it's so easy to say no, right?
Right.
That's another part of it is they have to give you the biggest hook they can find. And so as WWE has moved into this digital era, they've had to be more quarterly thinking than what are we doing in a year? Because the beast just doesn't work that way. And by the beast, I mean not Brock Lesnar, the business itself. You know what I mean?
Right.
The way they produce television and then give you a payoff on a pay-per-view event, a WrestleMania, it's not what it was. You can't do TV the way you did it in 1998. It simply doesn't work that way anymore. With an audience that consumes it at a near quarter-hour rate, there's people who are watching this podcast for the first 15 minutes, and maybe they'll come back later and they'll skim through to find the things they want. There's a reason why you have those feel-good touchdowns. It makes sense. On the surface level is what you got to do. And there will be a ton of things on WrestleMania that I think the most hardcore Lifetime fan will leave with. I went to WrestleMania last year, and I know people say, oh, the show's too long. But it had one of the best WWE matches I've ever seen with Kofi Kingston versus Daniel Bryan. You will get more than enough, I think, here. And I think a casual fan's going to get a lot here. You bring up, they're doing it at the service of younger talent to get these older guys into big matches. But, Chris Green texting here, great point. Did the Fiend make a right call in a political move here? Oh, yeah, I'm going to drop the title, but I get to beat John Cena at WrestleMania? I mean, if you're asking if you're the Fiend and on Wednesday you're in Saudi Arabia and they tell you you're going to lose the title tomorrow and you're going to lose it to Goldberg, but you're getting John Cena at WrestleMania and you have a 50-50 shot of beating him. If we were going the other direction we thought we were going to get, which was Fiend versus Reigns, that title was going on Reigns. It was going on him. And now you can get Goldberg losing to Reigns in a match that's predictable, but I don't think that upsets anyone because it's just this generational battle. Two former football players, right? That's an appeal. You can put those guys on ESPN. That's your big casual selling point. For hardcore fans, it's John Cena versus Bray Wyatt. We get to see Superman versus Doomsday. You get your comic book battle there, all right? You're getting, the matches and the stories they can tell, to me right now, are pretty compelling. There's double standards with the old guys, too, because I didn't see anyone freak out when Edge came back. Mind you, because you haven't seen him in 10 years and you never thought you were going to get him. So right now, WrestleMania on paper is a pretty good WrestleMania. And I also think on paper, it's better than last year's WrestleMania. You're getting Drew McIntyre versus Brock Lesnar. You're getting Becky versus Sasha. That's a fresh matchup. Okay. You're getting Charlotte versus Rhea. Two big women's matches. They're going to be awesome, right? You're getting those. Then these fresh takes, I think, on title matches. And then you're getting like generational ones. I think Styles versus Undertaker is a very, very interesting match. And it's a big challenge for the Undertaker to be able to pull off that one more big wow moment. And I think, based on the things I'm seeing on social media, that's what he's going for. If he only has a handful of matches, he wants to have the best ones he can have, and choosing AJ Styles is a good one. So I think if you really just lay it out on paper, WrestleMania isn't a bad show this year. I don't think it's. I don't think it. I don't know if you could say on paper it's the best one they've ever put together. But there's a lot of appeal for fans from a lot of different directions here, and they're not even done putting it together. The numbers show that. Obviously, NXT is battling, and everyone's saying AEW is better than them, and we're coming off the Revolution show, and AEW had a better pay-per-view than WWE this week. The Super Showdown Saudi Arabia shows are just these odd of canon things that do some service, but don't. There's just something about them that was off.
Well, they're made, everyone talks about the audience of one, writing for the audience of one, and it's Vince McMahon, but those are put on for the audience of one over in Saudi Arabia, who's the Crown Prince. So, like, they're even more narrow focused than, your typical WWE creative event. I think that, the WrestleMania, it looks pretty good on paper, but you've got your top four matches, which again, that's Goldberg Reigns, Cena Bray, Orton Edge, and then you have Styles and Undertaker. Those are your top four matches right now. What do they all have in common? The draw, at least in part, is nostalgia.
Sure.
That's not right now, they don't really care about sustainability because they have so much TV money coming in that nothing can really hurt them for the next 5 to 10 years. But when you've been tracking in nostalgia for so long and you're doing it at the expense of all of your newer talent, at talent that can still really go, when you're putting guys in the ring not to have the best match possible, but to carry a man in his 50s to a passable match just to do the job at the very end. Whether or not you agree with it, that's definitely where a lot of the fan frustration comes in. When all of your top four matches draw on nostalgia from the 90s and the early thousands, that's not a good sign. I mean, there's a reason they're dropping teenagers like crazy. And you know why they're dropping teenagers like crazy in the ratings is because these are all guys that weren't around when they were kids. Like, they weren't alive when Goldberg had the streak. They weren't alive when The Undertaker was an actual Undertaker or wearing a suit and tie and big purple gloves. They weren't around for any of this. And so you've got shows where, younger fans.
David.
Bring in order to keep the promotion going overall.
David Raider. Are you there, Dave? I may have David reconnect here with me. Hang on. I may have David reconnect with me. My connection with him is not particularly great. I'm going to see if I can get a new connection with him here. But continue to frame up here with me, guys, and I'll send a text to him saying reconnect. Lost you. All right, there we go. Getting your opinion here on screen here. Some people saying WrestleMania looks like a weak card. WrestleMania looks weak. I don't know if that looks weak at all. I think it's a pretty solid card so far. David, going to rejoin me here. Other people saying Mania will be a great show. Dave, can you hear me again, buddy?
Yeah, I can hear you, man. Apparently, I was just ranting at my phone and nobody else for about 2 minutes.
It's okay. It's all right. You were only out for a minute there, buddy.
Okay.
Other people chiming in with their take here. People said John Fury saying looks like a weak card. I just say lay it on paper. I think it's a strong card. I have a difference of opinion, but guess what? Different opinions are okay, just as long as you back them up. I don't like people that say stuff and don't explain it. Like, don't lay it out. So you laid out your thing. I've laid out my. I don't think I made a bad case for this being a fun show.
No, I understand. I understand your position on it. I think that.
Also, I think with Mania, there's this pressure from WWE fans to get those dream matches.
They want some nostalgia in part, I think. But, again, that's just. I think maybe sometimes they trade in it too much.
Okay. All right. Yes, people enjoying saying it's Vader. It's Raider time. Actually, it's Raider time. We have to correct you. It is David Raider is with us. Give him a follow on Twitter at Sir David Raider. So let's talk AEW Revolution. We had a really, really fun time at this show. This was a really, really great show. Maybe a show that had so much fun payoffs, just a lot of great moments out of it. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. We could get into all the different details of it. I will say there's some things I know people are raving about the card. I had some thoughts leaving that I got heat from some people in our squad for saying, but I thought it was a really, really fun show. I think AEW has a good sense of roster depth. They're not doing anything with anyone that doesn't have a sense of purpose, and like the next move hasn't been thought out. There was some stuff in retrospect. I went back and watched Cody versus MJF, and that was a really, really great match that was for many, many people was going to pay off. Cody chasing MJF, the 10 lashes, the cage match, going through all these different things. But there were a lot of like glaring things in the match, like with him being able to use a belt and it wasn't a hardcore match. There was just a lot of like ignoring the rules type stuff that like got under my skin when I watched it a second time. But overall, a great show. Jon Moxley is your new champion. Him and Jericho have a brawling match. But the match of the night was this tag team match. The Young Bucks versus Hangman Adam Page and Kenny Omega for the AEW titles. Great storytelling. They're still teasing the idea of Page turning on Omega and the Elite. Just a phenomenal match. So many near falls. If there's one match you maybe I don't have enough time before Raw. What should I go check it out? And you got it in BR Live and you haven't watched the whole pay-per-view or whatever. Go see this match. It is maybe one of the best tag team matches I've ever seen. I think the tag teams, in terms of when I go and see AEW Live, usually tend to deliver the best moments. And I had a really, really good time with this show and enjoyed it really live. That was a legit sellout, 12,000 people. One of the biggest crowds they've had so far, and a very unique venue. That is the first time I think they've had pro wrestling at Wintrust Arena, downtown Chicago, right next to the McCormick Place, where they have the C2E2 Pop Culture Convention. What are your big takeaways from the night that was Revolution, Dave?
Well, number one, going back to that tag match, I think that was, Kevin, we've gone to a ton of shows together.
Mm-hmm.
I have gone to a lot of shows. I saw them when they brought Takeover to Chicago. I saw that Gargano Ciampa Falls Count Anywhere match. Not Falls Count Anywhere, the Last Man Standing match.
Amazing.
I've seen a lot of, I was at All Out. I saw that Young Bucks versus Pentagon and Phoenix ladder match. I have seen a ton of other great matches in my time, and that Young Bucks versus Omega Hangman match was the greatest match I've ever seen live. And that is probably the best tag match maybe in the history of America. Like, honestly, like, I don't know what really stands out. Like, I don't know much about, like the Rock and Roll Express versus the Midnight Express, or the Freebirds or the Fantastics. Or
I'll tell you what the Midnight Express wouldn't do. They wouldn't kick out on pile drivers on wood. You protect
protect the spinach. I think like Jim Cornette has ever eaten spinach in his life, and the least healthy man.
I don't have a problem with corn. I don't have a problem with Cornette. I just enjoy.
I have a problem with his diet. I think double cheese, double onion. Like, oh my God, he's gonna have and he's yelling all the time. That man's blood pressure must be 420, baby. I think that tag match was the greatest I've ever seen. It was definitely the greatest I've ever seen. It might be the greatest tag team match in the history of America. And that's not even hyperbole. I really mean that. I'll tell you a match that it felt like they threw it in the spot it was at in order to kind of calm the crowd down for the main event, but then ended up really popping everybody. How about Pac and Orange Cassidy? That match, I think a lot of people didn't think Orange Cassidy could actually work.
No. And he can.
He really can. And in fact, the fact that he can do like a kip up and all this stuff with his hands in his pockets is like, that's incredibly athletic. I mean, Kevin, you know that he was the old fire ant in Chikara.
Yeah, he was, and he was doing all the lucha stuff there, and there was a handful of moves he actually did in the match that I'd seen him do in Chikara.
Yeah, exactly. He is a very athletic guy. He's got a little bit of a lucha background, and he can, he found a gimmick that works really well and has gotten him really over, and is almost kind of a commentary on indie wrestling, as it were, just like is everyone else is trying to get their shit in. He's getting so little in, but it's all for a purpose, and it's really over. And I think pairing him with Chucky and Trent is very low key, one of the best creative moves AEW made out of the gate. I think that pairing as a trio works perfectly. I think that has gotten all three of those guys over. I think that is the perfect amount that Orange Cassidy should be working. He does his one little spot a week during the tag matches, and it's enough to get him over, and everyone knows who he is and what he's about. But that match he had with Pac, he worked really hard with him. That work rate was up there with everything else on the show, and they had a great match. They didn't miss a single spot. Everything, it made sense logically, and honestly, I think it went so well, I almost did a disservice to the main event because it was supposed to kind of cool us off, I think, and instead, it really got us going. Like we both commented we were kind of tired for the main event.
Mm-hmm.
We were kind of lagging a little bit, and
Yeah.
I think
Well, I think
that's because that
it's
match
a show where. Yeah, I there were some matches I think that were kind of underwhelming on the show. I know a lot of people were raving about the whole thing. I thought I felt like Nyla Rose and Chris Statlander had a tough spot to go into after that tag team match. And there was a very, very tall order to go on, and there was a hard follow. There's no winning in that situation. This is not a shot at Nyla or Chris. I think I've seen them both have great matches, but in that hard follow situation, I'm not writing off what they were doing, but I didn't feel a ton of momentum out of that match. I didn't feel a ton of momentum being built on it. Nyla's strong. I don't know what this does for Chris Statlander. There wasn't a ton of chemistry in the match. There were some things that were entertaining, but it was just a hard follow. Also, the card opened up with Dustin Rhodes versus Jake Hager in his first match in AEW. He's been on television for them for months, since October. They had a hot match. They did some fun things in the match, but I kind of wish there were other matches that opened the show. I think there was some other stuff, but they opened up with two big names. But overall, this is an amazing show. AEW has a really, really great track record on big-time pay-per-view. I know everyone wants to immediately make comparisons between WWE and AEW. You're always going to do that. Just let the show stand on its own. If you're just an AEW fan and you haven't gotten the show, go get the show. Watch it before Wednesday night Dynamite show. It was really, really good. I felt like they know what their fans want, and they're giving them as much as they can. And they're not giving too much. And also a fun little part for you and I as Chicago Lifetime Wrestling fans. Someone I have known a long, long time. Colt Cabana getting a spot in the pre-show to kind of come out and save SCU in their post-match brawl with the Dark Order. I think Colt is a very underrated wrestler of his generation. I think he's probably one of the most funniest guys in wrestling business, in terms of what he did with creating his own t-shirt empire and sparking pro wrestling tees and then doing the podcast stuff. He's a very advantageous guy, and him not being in the fold of a big time wrestling company, whether it be WWE, AEW, or anyone, I think is criminal. I think he's a guy that is so smart and understands how to apply this art form in the ring to all these different other things, and also just be so gosh darn lovable. I mean, the guy is just a guy who's easy to root for. And have him in the fold in AEW is a really, really smart decision, and they confirm that he has signed with the company. David. All right, maybe David will rejoin me here in a second. Gotta love Be Live, the streaming provider that don't want to provide with me, David. All right, let's see if Dave can rejoin me here one more time. Dave? There you are, David. David, can you hear me?
And I think he's going to do a great job there.
All right, Dave. Can you hear me at all? You're cutting in and out again a little bit there, bud. Yeah, I can now. Kevin Curtis and Colt is an awesome pickup for AEW. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. So
it's the creepiest lighting ever of David here as it goes in and out. All right, gotta love it here, David. Yes, people yelling David with me in the chat. No, you were just blipping in and out here. We got some news about WWE Raw tonight. You want to get into this? Matt Riddle, bro, is in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Matt Riddle, bro, is in Brooklyn. If you're watching this episode or listening to it after Monday Night Raw, you already know what he may have already done. But it is widely reported that Matt Riddle is not the only NXT name that is set to appear possibly on this week's Monday Night Raw from Brooklyn, New York, but also Bianca Belair. Bianca Belair lost to Charlotte Flair last week in the main event of NXT. A pretty solid match. A lot of people upset about that, especially Bianca Belair fans. But there's a lot of momentum here for NXT stars when they appear on Raw. That's usually a sign that WWE really likes those talents and wants to do something with them. And of course, both of those guys have stirred their pot on social media. I think Belair has quite the charisma. Probably one of the more charismatic female superstars in WWE. And Matt Riddle, one half of the NXT Tag Team Champions, is he's another guy, likes to poke the bear, goes after Brock Lesnar and Goldberg left and right. What do you think of that, Dave? Matt Riddle, Bianca Belair tonight on Raw. David can't hear me at all. It happens. All right, let's see what you guys think of that move. Maybe Dave will rejoin me here in just a second here. See what you guys are thinking here. Matt Riddle versus Brock, maybe an F5 possibly tonight. I don't think you're going to get that here. Other people with different takes here. Tomorrow night on WWE Backstage. Yes, there are some things planned for WWE Backstage. Brandon Stockton wanted to know if we're going to get Matt Riddle and Lesnar in the ring tonight. I don't know about that. I'm intrigued with what they're going to do with Matt Riddle so far. If they were going to do that, I think it's something you would save for after WrestleMania. It's a fresh matchup if you want to do somebody like that. If you want to move Riddle around and have him on Raw or SmackDown and do something with Lesnar, I would save it after WrestleMania. Stephen Cummins noting Shayna Baszler versus Asuka tonight. I'm waiting for confirmation on that. I think WWE may have confirmed some matches on Raw. I don't know if that's one of them here. Kevin Durgan saying Brock is going to kill him. He's going to kill him. Well, we'll see what happens there in general. You guys can join us tomorrow on the show. We will be with you guys live in the late afternoon time around 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern. Hopefully, Robert DeFields will join me on the show. He's my regular co-host. He was sick today, so I hope the best to him. I hope he gets better and gets well soon. Continue to follow the show on all of the different platforms. On the podcast, subscribe to WrestleZone Radio. Give it a 5-star review. Share it with your friends. YouTube, we're up there as well. You guys can join us on that. And, of course, here on Facebook. Video exclusive, not on the podcast feed, not on the audio podcast feed. Tonight after Monday Night Raw, our Raw post show. Dominic D'Angelo will join me on that. And we'll come back here. For all the faithful followers of the show, thank you so much for supporting us despite technical difficulties and all these different things. The show is growing by leaps and bounds. We're getting full on the virtual couch, and I want to keep it growing. Thank you so much for your support. I really, really appreciate it. Remember, you're watching wrestling. You want to say this sucks. You want to say this sucks. You want to say that sucks. People saying the Asuka Baszler match is confirmed. That's a pretty good match. Getting AJ Styles versus Aleister Black tonight on Monday Night Raw. Seems like a pretty good Raw. We'll talk to you right after it on the Raw Post Show exclusively here on Facebook and YouTube. And join us tomorrow on WrestleZone Daily. Thank you so much for the support. Remember, enjoy wrestling.